Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Power Hour with Mel and Rebecca. And no, you don't have to listen to a full hour because this is truncated and cut down from the full hour that we spend together. But yeah, this is one of many Power Hours we have had. We never called these Power Hours before, though, but I wish we had.
Yeah, our power hours definitely get cut down into a few minutes, which makes no sense. But we're efficient, right? We're streamlining the hour. I didn't even know that was possible, but I guess we've made it possible.
Look at us, the practice over the year plus together. But yeah, so we've had a lot of talks about starting a podcast. I have. Like, we should start a podcast. We should, and then not really knowing what it's going to be about. But it's kind of like Seinfeld. It can be the podcast about nothing and everything at the same time.
It can be the podcast about nothing. It's true. I guess it's more like how we think, what we're thinking on a daily basis as we're actively doing. Because I think we're constantly having to search for solutions and deal with different personalities and different people. And I like to think that like our brains kind of come together and create something that's even greater. So,
I love your brain.
I love your brain.
Mutual appreciation for our brains.
For sure. But figured might as well record some of these and get some insight. And I'd love to obviously start publishing some of this and get some other brains to start commenting and maybe, input things that we haven't even thought of yet, or, some of our thinking could help somebody else out there. So it's the podcast about nothing and everything. So thanks for plugging in.
Oh, I like that. That's a great, thanks for plugging in.
I got that from our logo.
Yeah. I dig it. One of the thoughts I also had in sort of like mini prep for this is that we are doing, right? And I've never been one that always enjoys talking about what I'm doing. I'd rather just do it, right? Sometimes you have to talk about what you need to do first, but I'd rather just take action and do. And so I think that's also been kind of hard. That's why it's been hard for us to start this, is because we've been just constantly doing. But you're right. I hope that any of our conversations can help not just edify the team that we have and that we're working with now, but also anybody out there that might find any of this of value to them. So 100%. Exciting.
And alluding to what you said earlier, we have many of these brainstorm sessions in our own power hours, but this is the first one that's been recorded for public use. So excited to see what comes of it.
I know. And the blooper reels that I'm sure we'll have too. Yes. So stay tuned for those. But one of the things that I did want to kind of kick off and talk about is expectations. Because I think that's important, not, for those that are tuning in and getting to know us and what we do. We are Mel's owner and founder of FMO Media, and I am client services director. So we're working with clients as well as with our team on a daily basis. And Mel, you are instrumental in all of the daily activities. You're not just sitting when I am going on recruitment calls for new team members. I always say that our owners and founders, they're not just names and faces on a slide. You guys are integral to every aspect of FMO, have been and still are, in working alongside of us as colleagues. So, the both of us were working with a team, but we're also working with clients, and you have expectations on both sides, right? Client expectations and team expectations. And sometimes it can be a challenge because they might clash as well. But if we were to talk about, let's talk about clients for a second. When it comes to client expectations, what are your top three sort of philosophies or guidance you would give to account managers or anybody working with clients when it comes to setting the best expectations?
Oh, before I even get to three, my number one is always the why, going back to the why, seeking to understand. I think that clients really entrust us with their business, essentially, right? One thing I always say is that we are basically the same handshake that maybe they've been giving people to build their business for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years is now extended into the digital world, right? So we are an extension of them. We are now the hand online, essentially. And so we need to make sure that we're representing the brand well with some guidance. So there's a little bit of balance in terms of, yeah, sometimes we do know better about social media because we're actively doing it. We have more data. We have more accounts that we manage, not just yours. But at the same time, we are not that business owner. And they have experience and they have data within their market, what they've done that we need to listen and understand before we can guide anyone. And I literally was just saying this to someone earlier, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. And so I think that account managers need to express how much they care, seek to understand the client before they then determine that they're the authority on their socials. So I can't even think of 3. I think that's like the one and only, that's the root, the essential root of when it comes to managing an account.
Yeah, agreed. It's collaboration, right? And you're not merely outsourcing to us. We want to be our clients' team members. We want to work with them together to help build their brand and build that awareness and watch them grow. So yeah, I think it also, it encompasses this, but communication, and somebody said this, and I should attribute it, but I don't know who. Somebody said, you're never going to lose a client or a team member to over communication. Like if you're an uber communicator, then the chances of losing a client or the chances of losing anyone in your company are slim to none because you have overly communicated. And at the same time too, I think communication still has to be the right kind of communication, because you could over communicate, but it could be poor communication, right? And so when it comes to communicating expectations, I think you have to be really clear on scope and what you're able to do and the deadline for deliverables with a client, or when they can expect something. Because one of the things that I like our team to know as we're training and coaching them is that we might be the expert, but like you said, we still have to understand their why. And in understanding their why, we have to shine a light on the journey, the tunnel that we're taking them down with their strategy. And if we're not the ones guiding them with that light, they're going to stumble in the dark. We're going to stumble over them, or vice versa. And we're not actually going to be able to move forward with execution on anything. So I think that's a large part of it when it comes to setting expectations and being able to guide someone clearly with the communication, is being able to tell them how things are running, when the timeline is for something, when they can expect something, and keeping them, smart goals, realistic goals too, right? Smart meaning the specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound, going by that, very corporate sounding, but oh, so important.
Yeah. And piggybacking off of the communication aspect, it's 2 ways, right? So that collaboration, communication, one thing that you always want to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So somebody working with us or just starting to work with us, they might be like, they might be used to other agencies or other people or whoever they've worked with in the past that has managed some of their social media presence. And maybe they're being like very nice, right? You show them something and they're like, oh, I like it. And then you don't really have any other feedback. So part of that is asking the right questions. Because if you're just talking the whole time, then that's not really communication. That's just speaking. There's a difference. Yeah. huge nugget right there. That's not communication. It's understanding and asking the right questions. And sometimes you may have to pull some of what they like or don't like out of them by asking those questions. And then another thing, when I'm on a launch call with a client, I typically tell them, like, it's not that we don't have feelings, but we're open to anything. So it's like in marketing, you probably can't really have too many feelings because you may personally really like this logo you just created, or this graphic, or this aesthetic, or the wording, right? You may think that you just came up with the greatest thing. And it might have taken you a good amount of time to come to that. And then to be shut down sometimes hurts a little bit, but you got to take it. And then you have to understand why, right? Why did they shut this down, et cetera? And then don't be afraid to have a conversation about it, because you may learn something, or you may teach the client something and eventually change their mind. And there's no such thing as a dumb idea or a dumb graphic or whatever, because you're going to be able to take that moment, and you didn't fail in that moment, right? You learned from it. And now you can better align yourself maybe with the client's brand or vision moving forward. So it's definitely a collaboration. It's a relationship that's starting. So that's why we talk about, even when we launch a client, right? It's like the first 3 months are like the honeymoon phase. We're dating, we're engaged, right? And eventually we'll get married, because we want to seek to understand them, and we want to continue to collaborate and create something that's greater than the both of us, for sure.
So that makes me wonder, what do you think about this? But I wonder, are people afraid of having that rumble, as Brene Brown would call it, rumbling together, and having a conversation around something that isn't agreeable just yet, because I think that sometimes it can be a little nerve-wracking or anxiety inducing if you do have a client that's giving you feedback that is on the more negative side. And we do want clients to be direct and honest with us. You're right. We have thick skin. I like to say we have thick skin, and you won't hurt our feelings. We are human, but you won't hurt our feelings, because we want to make sure that we're heading in the right direction for them. But do you think it also comes from a sort of aversion to conflict?
1000%. Nobody likes conflict. I mean, there are some people that thrive, I guess, in conflict. I can't say nobody, but I am certainly not one of them. Me personally, I've been a huge conflict avoider in the past, but I've realized that, especially I think over the last closer to like 5 or 6 years, that the more you avoid conflict, the greater the conflict actually becomes, because you're never addressing the root of the problem or the issue. The other thing I think about is, think about the people in your life that you respect, or you've gained, respect for. Why do you respect them? Is it because they sugarcoated something, or is it because they told you the truth? And so I know that's a heavy, kind of life lesson weaved between our account managing, but it's true. It's your life is work, your work is life. It all kind of intertwines together. And somebody else just said this. Actually, I say this all the time, but I was just on another call with a client. She said, how I do one thing is how I do everything. And so I'm sure that if you lack in communication with clients, you probably lack in communication with your relationships, with spouse, friends, partners, etc. And so, I mean, it can go way deeper than that, but I'll leave that for now.
We're going deep down the tunnel here.
We are.
I think that's accurate. There's always going to be an exception, right? But yeah, I love that. Wait, repeat that again. How did she phrase it?
How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's true, because you can't separate yourself. You can't separate who you are in work and life. And actually, somebody was telling me about this. I think this was my personal trainer, and I haven't yet watched the series, but he was telling me about this new series that's out. Can't remember the name of it, so sorry, folks. We'll put it in the caption if we think of it. But there's a series out that allows you to forget your work life and also forget your personal life. So you're living these two separate lives. And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And he was telling me about this, and how he's like, he was watching it so he could talk about it with one of his other clients. And so I thought, oh, wow, that's really fascinating. So instead of work-life balance, you're going in the series, mind you, they're aiming for this work-life separation, but of course there's consequences to that. And, in any good drama, there's conflict. So there's a consequence to that. But one of the things that I see with people a lot these days is the idea of that work-life balance, and your work is your life, and your life is part of your life's work, right? But very few of us, I think, are blessed with the ability to be doing our life's work And for other people, it might be a job. And so you need that because you haven't yet found your life's work, or maybe you haven't come to the realization that there is that ebb and flow in life, right? And you're trying to define a line that isn't really there. And it goes back to that, right? That, what I do with FMO is how I am or should be, right, in my personal life as well, and vice versa.
Yeah, 100%. I think also, my light just went out. Hold on 1 second.
Shine a light, shine a light.
We'll make that little blooper. No, but I think also, oh shoot, you just said something. The light threw me off. You just said something about.
I'll add something and maybe it'll trigger it too.
Okay.
Because when I think about the ebb and flow, right, it doesn't mean that you should be a workaholic. Some of us are, myself. It doesn't mean that that's a bad thing either. It just means that the ebb and flow is like, when you have to devote more time to certain priorities, and those priorities could be more relegated to your personal life, or they could be more relegated to the work life, but both of them are life.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is what you're talking about, even the phrase, your life's work, right? I think a lot of people right now are, and I believe it's always happened. I think it's just more prominent on social media. You're searching for what is your life's work? What value do I bring to this earth? What value this and what value that? And you don't necessarily have to have a crazy platform to be able to bring your story to. You don't necessarily have to, start a nonprofit and do this and do that to be able to have an impact. Your impact, I believe, I don't remember the story correctly, and somebody out there does, but it's, you start off with your community, right? You start with yourself, you lead yourself, then you can lead your family, then you can make an impact in your community. And part of that is, your work and what you're doing with that. So I think that as you start to, for example, going back to the communication and working with clients and being an account manager, you are learning things throughout the way. And there are some things that you can learn from other people's mistakes, but there's some things that only come with time and experience. I think that you can quicken that time and experience if you have the guts to not avoid conflict and to talk to people and ask the questions and seek to understand. So it all just comes right back around, to understanding other humans, and then executing on the skills. The skills are different. Those you develop, right? So you'll develop the, how to create something really awesome graphically, how to make sure that you're capturing the right copy and you're placing this and you're placing that. So your skill is what you essentially, get paid for, and that is the job. But what you take out of the job and what you become through it is really, really important. And that's what I think ends up blending that life and work sort of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it too, the experience isn't just from on the job experience, but it's your whole life experience, right? The things that you did in high school as extracurricular activities could end up being perhaps your life's work, or aid in what it is you are doing in your job to get you to that next level. It could be, that you took public speaking and now you're, customer facing, client facing, and you need to lean on that and that experience to help you with what you're doing. So yeah, it all plays into that as well.
I'll say too, I think, at FMO Media, I think we provide a really cool, culture that encourages, entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship and, being able to be open, right? There's not really, we don't have a lot of rules that you have to follow, meaning you don't have to, it's a little bit different. We also expanded extremely remotely after, 2020, after the pandemic hit. And so there's things that you can control. There's things that you can't control in terms of employees. And we just want to make sure that people have the tools and capabilities to do their jobs and be able to service their clients. But other than that, we're very open, we're very accessible, and we want everyone to genuinely lead a good life, and so I know that that's not the norm in the office world, right? I know that's not the norm in careers. Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes a lot of people may come into the role expecting that, or, you know, whether they have experience or not, they kind of just see like what's online and what's out there and what other people are experiencing, you know, in that world. And I think it's just totally different. They have these expectations that align with X, Y, and Z. Meanwhile, they could just not avoid conflict and just come directly to us, talk to us, and we can find a solution together. There's very few forward-thinking companies out there, but I do think there are more developing. So I'm excited to see that. I don't know, you know, I think it needs to develop in order to be able to have that next generation come in and work. It's a revolution.
Yeah. Oh, it feels like we've started something.
No. Let's name it. Quick, grab the Instagram handle.
Sign us up. Yeah, I think that was beautifully put. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, agreed. What do you think some of the expectations are for not just folks coming to FMO, but people in the agency life, our industry?
Ooh. Don't have any.
I like that. One of my sayings is high hopes, low expectations.
Yeah, I love that. That's what I'm going to go with that. High hopes, low expectations. Look, you're going to dive into a role. Okay. And it'll be your first role, maybe your second role, maybe your third role, and make the most out of it. You know, learn everything you can, learn what you like, what you don't like, maybe, but do it to the best of your ability. Even if you don't enjoy doing it, you're going to be able to have that tool in your pocket, or at least sound more educated, know what you're talking about in future roles and endeavors. Okay. And something that I did sales for a really long time, and I didn't like the thought of it. I didn't like, you know, when I heard salesperson, I thought of a briefcase and walking door to door and people saying no. And so I remember one of my first sales jobs was like, you know what, I'm just going to have fun with it. I'm just going to, you know, talk to people, meet them. If it works out, great. If not, I can go back to X, Y, and Z. And that's what I did. I had fun with it. I made the most of it. Then I started asking questions. I started seeing what, you know, people that were successful in those roles did. And I noticed that they also were having fun with it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they didn't sit around doing nothing. That's, you know, you do want to be effective and be able to have action items. It's that you're never going to learn anything that way. Right. But, you know, I took a lot of that. Do I enjoy cold calling and, you know, dialing, smile and dial? No, I definitely wouldn't go back to that right now. But I did it and I learned from it. I learned how to speak. I learned how to engage people quickly on the phone. And so now that translates to, you know, what I do on a daily basis on calls, et cetera. So what are your thoughts? What do you think besides that?
You said something I want to point out, watching other people doing the same job. And I think that's key, is observing, right? Because you can get a lot of the experience from the practical side of doing the work and executing on the work and trial and error and leading into those uncomfortable conversations you have to have. But you can learn a lot from watching other people. And I've learned a lot from watching you, Mel, over the last 18, 20 months. I've known you a little bit longer, but 20 months of actually working with you, and Jamie and Ace and, you know, even the new people on our team. I think there's one of the best things about us in FMO and the foundation that you and Jason, Jamie, and Christian laid for us is that we can all contribute, right? And our thoughts do matter, and we can be entrepreneurs within FMO. So we can come with our ideas, and we should come with our ideas and bring value, right? And so that making sure that stays the same for all of the new people coming in. I learn a lot from our new folks that are just joining the team, because everybody's coming from a different point of view and a different experience. But yeah, in terms of expectations, I think one of the things that I'm noticing with folks is maybe the expectation, that the stigma that is out there that we are seeing on social media platforms about what it means to be a social media manager or a digital marketer or anyone in the industry. And it's a negative stigma. I mean, I guess all stigmas probably are negative, but it's a negative idea that you don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't take care of yourself, you don't ever have any personal life or personal time. And I don't think that is true. And I don't think that has to be true. I think you have more autonomy in your life than what a social media post will give you credit for. And if you want to buy into that narrative, then that narrative will come true for you. But if you want to create a better life for yourself, then does it mean there's not going to be hard work? Absolutely not. There's going to be the hard work, right? I think you derive a lot of value from doing a lot of good work and not shying away from that. But can you be smart about how you do it? Can you set the best expectations? And, if I think a lot of the stigma is really around freelance social media managers who haven't set boundaries for their clients, who haven't set scope of work for their clients and expectations. I worked as a freelance graphic designer for a long time, and that was like my side hustle alongside other jobs too. And I learned the hard way. If I didn't have a contract, if I didn't have boundaries set in place, if I didn't give clear expectations on deliverables and the number of edits that I would give a client, a project that should only have lasted 2 weeks would drag out for 6 months, and you're stuck. It's hard to backtrack from that. So a lot of thoughts all wrapped into one, but I think that there is a stigma out there. And I think the stigma is a narrative that can easily be changed as long as people don't fall into it in the sort of victimhood of woe is me working in social media. Look at how hard I'm working. If we flip it, and we can go back to what you're saying about having fun along the way and entertaining and educating and collaborating together.
Oh man, there's so many thoughts around even what you just said too. Is you're going to be on social media no matter what.
Yeah.
Right. So there's so many, and that right there can be overwhelming in general. Right. I've seen a lot that's advertised to us and this and that, and so it's like, there's a lot that can happen on social media itself. And so some of those boundaries that you're talking about may involve giving your eyes a break of scrolling, because you may end up, you may scroll and look for some research like on a client or something like that. And then you're going to get up and end up on like maybe your explore page and, scrolling and watching Frenchies and dogs, and then an hour later, you're like, oh my God, I got nothing done. Well, were you really productive in that hour? Did you get distracted? And it's a very easy way to get distracted within the social media realm. Like it's true. So you have to set up areas where, okay, you're going to dedicate this time to research and creating. And maybe you set up a timer, right? So maybe you set up, okay, I'm going to stop this research in 30 minutes so that I don't get lost. And so now you have a reminder. But those little things only come with experience. When you mess up, you get maybe you do feel like overwhelmed or something like that. And then now you learn the boundaries that you need to set for yourself to be able to deliver your job. And so, that's just one aspect, but moving further into that part, we'll just delete this part because I don't know where I was going to go with it. So.
Oh, I was with you, but
there was a lot of things you said. I'm like, I feel like I should have a notepad where I'm like, okay, I want to go back to this.
We probably need to. You know what we need? We need the admin on the computer doing research for us, like Joe Rogan has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I feel like I want to Google, but then I don't want to get distracted. So I'm not going to.
Right. You don't have to click clack of the typing. But something that you said too, and this is why probably podcasts do go on for hours, because Power Hour could be like Power Afternoon or Power Fridays. but I think it was something you said around the I guess the idea that you can get distracted on social media and it can take you down a rabbit hole. And that's the point of social media too, right? So it's working on us, and it takes immense focus, because I fall into it as well. It's like, 9:30 at night, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna take a few minutes to scroll. And then before you know it, for me, it's Shebas, for you, it's Frenchies, among other things. But you're like, how did I get here? Why am I looking at these reels? I don't understand. You're looking at, strangers' accounts that are high profile stranger accounts that have dogs in their feed, And so, yeah, I think it takes incredible focus in this job, but it also comes down to, you shared a social media post the other day that said time management is really self-management.
Yeah.
And I love that. I was like, oh yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. I wish I had thought about it that way, but now I have the benefit of somebody else having thought of it first. But I think that's key, right? Is making sure that you are prioritizing your time, and priorities can being able to prioritize can make up for what you might feel is a lack of time or not enough time too.
1000%. So actually, let's get into like the technical part of it just a little bit, because we can philosophize and theorize and talk about a lot of stuff that's on our mind, but we put this into action. We're very practical. Things that we talk about, we implement right away. And Rebecca, you're one of the best implementers I know. And you're one of the most organized people I know. And because you're organized and you can self-manage and prioritize, is a big reason that FMO has grown and been able to implement things so quickly. You'll see, and whoever's listening to this, you'll see if you've worked for different companies or you're going to work for different companies, you'll see that a lot of it all stems from leadership. If leadership is not someone that's actively trying to grow the company and change it, and they're just happy, where they are, then there's not a lot of changes that are going to happen. And that's what happens with people that sometimes feel stuck where they are. They're like, oh, I'm not, I've been here for a couple years, and I don't really want to be maybe a manager of other people, but I also don't see where else I could fit in the company. I'm really good at XYZ, but they don't have a role in that. And so then you leave and you go to another company, and FMO is not like that. So going back to the practical parts of it, how do you set up your week for success? Like, how do you set up even your month, right? Because I've seen you plan certain things out. So what are maybe don't give us the whole spectrum, but what are top 3 things that you could recommend to somebody to help them set themselves up for success?
That's a great question. I can't give away all my secrets, only for the team. But well, I know that you do this too, and so does Ace. And just saying real quick too, kudos to the 4 of you when starting FMO to be forward thinking and always open to change, because that means that people like myself, and there are plenty of people on our team who are adding just as much value and are able to help us grow too, but we wouldn't be able to do that with the open-mindedness and the trust that you guys instill in us back. But when it comes down to it, prepping for your week ahead is important. And I do like to look ahead. I like to look and figure out, our account managers are scheduling out their clients 2 weeks ahead. And I like to see what's coming down the pipeline 2 weeks ahead. But if you can think big picture and small picture, you need to see what's happening at least the Sunday before the week ahead. I love checking the calendar, but I'm in my calendar constantly. When I was an account manager, I was in my client checklist constantly and my calendar, but I was really in my client checklist to know exactly what I needed to do for those clients at any moment of the day, and shuffling priorities. And I'll get to that in a second. But, having the big picture view and the small picture view of your calendar. One of the things that I do for the 3 of us to keep us on track is know what we have to do throughout any given day, because we're all focused on different things. But if we don't know, and by we, I'm talking about you and me and Ace, if we're on calls that we have to be on together or prep for calls, we need to make sure that we're devoted enough prep time. So that would be number 2 is, are you giving yourself the prep time? And realistically, you might be called in for something where you haven't been given prep time, But if you're in control of everything you possibly can be in control of, and part of that comes down to being organized, right? Do I know how to find all the client files and assets? Can I look back in the communication, which is an always constant improvement, right? How can we improve those systems to make sure that everything is at our fingertips and readily available, so we can jump into an impromptu call, so that we can handle someone being out sick, right? You're always going to have those things that come up that are either urgent or emergent, and you need to take care of them. But if you have your calendar prepped, if you know what's happening in your day, then you can prioritize better. And so that gets me to the next one I would say is triaging. And it comes from the emergency room tactic of, who is not going to make it, who is in critical condition and needs the most immediate attention, and who needs Tylenol and a lie down and, a cold compress, and figuring that out within the workload itself. What do I absolutely have to be on as a call? Who do I absolutely need to talk to? Who do I need to give feedback to? What project do I need to be hands-on in to move the needle forward with it? And then what can I delegate to others? How, who's in that critical condition, but I can say, hey, Mel, can you hop on this call? I'm not going to be able to make it. I have to handle X, Y, or Z. Or, hey, we've got some great community managers that have, I've had the privilege of being able to coach and train alongside you and other leaders, and they've been able to rise through the ranks and take charge and take leadership. I can entrust that if I delegate something to them, whether they need a little bit of direction or not, they can go and do that. So knowing how I can triage and knowing who I can delegate to, I think is key as well. So it's really three things, right? It's calendar, prepping your calendar, prepping the time that you need for any of those calls, and being able to triage, being able to decide, it's about discernment, right? And that can be challenging. And sometimes it comes with experience, and other times it comes with gut and experience too. And having the right people on the team that you can count on, because nobody can do it all alone, right? I couldn't do this all alone. Major shout out to Corey. For the longest time, Corey was basically a hybrid client services admin and my go-to assistant unofficially. And she kept me on track for a lot of things too. So we all need each other, right? We want people on our team who are independent, self-starters, self-motivated, but at the end of the day, we all have to be able to collaborate as a unit too.
1000%. And I was thinking of a third P, but I think I got it. I was like prepare. And then I was like, perfect. Now I think it would be practice, but right. That goes back to, that's exactly what that is. And then the overarching theme right now of my life is, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So
there you go. I love that. Mine is practice makes progress. So if you practice, you make progress. And if you stay ready, then you don't have to get ready.
Yeah. I love it.
I love it. I think we're coming up on the end of the hour. So I think it's a great way to end our first public power hour.
That was awesome.
Thanks for plugging in, everyone. Yeah.
I can't wait for you guys to hear more. Do you want to end it again just in case editing?
So I think that's all we have for today, folks, with our power hour, first ever official. Thanks for tuning in, or plugging in, as we say. I don't know what we'll talk about next, but it'll be everything and anything and nothing. Yeah. So.
We look forward to your feedback, your comments, etc. Let's keep doing this. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'll catch you next time, but I'll see you sooner, Mel.
Bye. Bye.